Welcome to Spartan Up Podcast. We are here at Fenway Park, home of the 2018 World Series champions. But Tim, we're talking about the idea that some people may think sports and think Boston. You think brains.
I think brains. I think intellect, right? I think this city kind of distinguished itself universally or, around the globe as one of the real centers of intellect. So I think it's great for us to be able to come here and kind of leverage some of that, right?
Sure. Harvard's the top of that list.
It is at the top of that list.
So I was thinking,
wouldn't
it be awesome if we could get someone from Harvard to come on the show, maybe even, imagine it was an executive editor from Harvard Business Review.
Johnny, we got her.
What if she was also the host of the HBR IdeaCast?
We got her.
Who is she?
Sarah Green Carmichael, who's talked to amazing individuals. There's just so much to learn from her because she's learned from so many people. It's sort of that filter that comes now to us.
The way I think about it, if we're putting that advice out there to help more people become leaders and anyone can get it, then anyone can see themselves as a leader. Anyone can have the tools they need to step up and influence other people and make change in the world. And I don't think that there's a person out there who thinks the world has enough good leaders.
Right.
We need more.
We need more.
And Joe, you've talked to, hundreds of people on this podcast before, which I think is, certainly expanding our knowledge. But she was just another one that hit home.
Just another one. When you pick up the phone and you call Harvard or, the DOD or any Spartan, it's like you could hear a pin drop. They jump for us.
What were they thinking?
We were awfully lucky to get her.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're going to ask you to stick around because at the end of the episode, we're going to talk about what we got from that, and you'll get from it lots more than just that.
This episode of the Spartan Up Podcast is brought to you by Shady Rays Sunglasses, built for adventure. Go to shadyrays.com and use the code SPARTAN to get 50% off when you order 2 pairs of sunglasses from Shady Rays.
Hey Spartans, a quick update. At the time of this interview, Sarah Green Carmichael was an executive editor at HBR, Harvard Business Review, and the host of the HBR IdeaCast, a position she'd held for 10 years. In the time since we recorded this, she's moved on to a new position.
We are here at Fenway, and we are interviewing the podcast of all podcasts. In other words, this woman, when we're done we won't have to do another podcast after this because you're at Harvard.
Harvard
right?
Business Review.
Right, Harvard Business Review, and you have a podcast.
Yes, the HBR IdeaCast.
So you talk to the smartest people on the planet.
Yeah, yes.
And you got all the information we possibly could need. So when this is over,
yes.
When you're done listening to this, listeners out there, viewers, you're done. We don't have to do anymore. Tell me about the podcast. I don't know much.
Yeah, so I've hosted that podcast for about 10 years. And we interview people with ideas. That's why we call it the IdeaCast. And we hope to get actionable advice that people can use to succeed in their careers.
So give me an example of an idea.
Well, I think one of my favorites is the power of small wins. This is a Harvard professor named Teresa Amabile, and she just talks about how if you can make progress on your goal, progress every day, it will just keep you motivated.
So it's the one-step theory, one step at a time.
Yeah, and tangible progress. Like today, I made it these 5 more inches of my goal towards my goal. That's all it takes.
And do you have to celebrate them?
No, in her experiment, she has people write them down. So it's like accountability and also keeping a record, and that makes you happy.
And but I'm thinking about prisoner of war camp and things like that, where you don't make any progress, but somehow people hang on. They have hope, right? So have you come across anything that explains that theory, or is that just maybe a very resilient person that's able to hang on without seeing the small wins?
Yeah, I think you would have to almost sort of trick your brain into saying, well, just getting through a day is progress in that situation.
Right. Finding anything you could to hang on to.
Yeah.
What other good stuff?
So one of my favorite interviews I did was with a mountaineer named Rick Ridgeway. And every time I try to say his name, I'm paranoid I'm going to say Wick Ridgeway. So I have to really think about it. But Rick Ridgeway, who was, I believe, the first American to summit K2 without oxygen, which is pretty badass.
Pretty badass.
Yeah. And just to hear him talk about, his life as a mountaineer and now what he's doing for trying to do work on sustainability was so cool. And he just had some incredible experiences.
What were his tricks to get, because it's a pretty motivated person, putting himself out there. And
I think what I took away from that was just a certain acceptance of risk. I mean, he has talked openly and written openly about his best friend and climbing partner died, and he had to bury him on the mountain.
That's a tough one.
That's just tough. And I asked him about it, and he was just like, I mean, we both knew that was a possibility. And that really stuck with me, that you would want a goal so much that you would just be like, I mean, we knew that was a possibility.
A friend called me a little bit ago, and his house is in the middle of burning down in Malibu.
Oh, no.
And obviously that's a problem, right? He's got young kids, everybody's safe, but the house is gone. And he had the same, because what could you do? Like, it is what it is, right? You're on the side of the mountain, the guy dies, it sucks, but bury him.
That's tough.
Move forward.
Got to keep moving forward.
The one thing I do in situations like that, not that I've had to bury my friend on the side of a mountain, is there's always some worse situation, right? Like the phone ringing right now while we're in the middle of this. Hang on 1 second. Decline that. Right? There's always some worse situation to compare it to. We were doing a podcast, and the gentleman I was interviewing was talking about how it was really hard on stage, and he had forgotten what to say. And it was a big deal, right? And I thought, well, it's like a first world problem. Yeah, it's a big deal. It's uncomfortable at the moment, but he's not burying his friend on the side of the mountain.
Yeah, it's all relative.
It's all relative. And so if you're able to measure it up against something, I think it helps you get through it.
Yeah. And I've seen people actually in that situation quite a bit. And just, it's so disarming to hear someone say, you know, I literally just forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry. Just give me a second.
On stage.
Yeah. And audiences they're right there with you. That's everyone's biggest public speaking fear. So then the audience is kind of rooting for you to, okay, like you can do it.
They could connect with you.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
What other good ones?
Oh man. Well.
So many.
I mean, exactly. Well, and I think for me, I mean, so I think we're now up over 600 episodes, and we do the show every week, right?
You trying to like one up us or something?
No. It's not a competition.
I mean, we work really hard here, but
I think for me, what I just took away from it is just the consistency of doing it every week for 10 years. I mean, and that's sort of how I approach a lot of things. So like outside of work, I do a lot of peak bagging. I like to climb mountains. They're not big mountains, but I've climbed a lot of them. And so to me, that's sort of how I approach, back to the small wins thing. It's like, just do it every week. Just do something
consistent.
Every day.
No, it's like I have my workout every day. I do it every day, right? I got my routine every day. And so I think you're right. People can be good, but it's one thing to be good like once in a while. It's another thing to do it like consistently forever.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking, like you guys, every week?
Every week.
How do you get your guests?
We ask them.
You use the name. You use the name Harvard.
Yeah,
and you throw Harvard
we're
around.
Just like, hey, we're doing this podcast. Probably they just see like Harvard fly by. Like, yes, sure. No, and we pull a lot from what Harvard Business Review magazine is publishing, books we're publishing, people kind of in our orbit.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you have it pretty easy.
It is actually. I would say like
because we're sweating. We're like the Spartan thing. Who?
No, but it was great. I got your call. I was like, I'm totally there.
Do you Are you a guest on a lot of podcasts?
I've been on some, been on a few.
Not as cool
it's
as
super weird to be a guest, having hosted something.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I'm enjoying it. It's a good challenge for me.
Give me another one, another guest, another one you did.
All right. Let me think about that. So I think one guest that we've actually had on a different show that I host, also for HBR. So I host another show called Women at Work. And we've just recorded an episode with a Professor Babson, whose name is Tina Opie. She is phenomenal. And she and another professor, Veronica Rebello, talk all about how women can form bonds with other women at work. And I just thought hearing from both of them was just super interesting.
But I mean, of course women form bonds with other women at work. What's unique about that?
Oh, we're so different though. Women are not a monolith. You know, we have all different backgrounds and belief systems, and sometimes, you know, there's some research that shows women can sometimes be competitive at work, especially if it seems like there's only one spot, you know, for a woman at the top. It's like 5 guys and 1 woman, and all the women know, well, we're just competing for that one spot. So they really talked about how can we overcome
backstabbing and things.
There's some research that sort of shows that has happened.
That women are more prone to do that than men?
In environments where there's only one, there's a perception that there's only one spot at the top.
Got it.
Not.
We have Dr. L here in the. What do we know about this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like competition among women it's a horrible thing that brings women down. I mean, it's like in the work.
So you're saying women are more competitive than men?
In a really horrible way.
In a really horrible way.
They think that women women sort of come from the position of there's not enough available to me, so I have to do whatever I can to get there.
There's only one spot.
Right, and so like
Yeah.
even in business, women will hold their secrets and not share with others because it's
Very
like
sneaky.
it is sneaky.
Well, the answer is just to have more than one spot, and then that problem goes away.
I have this Chinese friend, this lady, and she has a saying in Chinese: "One mountain, two lions, no good." And so I guess it's a little bit of that, right?
I think so. I mean, I think to some extent in business, everything is relative, right? And maybe it's just true in life. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be better than the other guy. So one of my favorite studies on this topic is that everyone says women are less competitive than men. That is not really true, depending on how you look at it. Women are fantastic and fierce competitors on behalf of other people. Like if you tell a woman she's negotiating for someone else, she will go in there and fight tooth and nail for that person. But if you tell her she has to negotiate for herself, now suddenly it's like, oh, well, I'm not sure I should do that.
Really?
There's probably backlash for that. So I think when I think about sort of changing the dynamic in organizations, especially male-dominated organizations, to be more kind of high performance, but high team performance as opposed to dog eat dog, I just think about that. How can we fight for each other instead of thinking about how can I get mine?
So should I put women we have lots of women in the organization, put them in charge of negotiating for the men? What would be, and I don't mean that facetious, like.
Yeah, sure, why not? Let's
Right?
try it. See
I
if
mean,
it
but they
works.
would do better, you're saying, than the men negotiating, or?
They would do just as well.
Yeah.
Women do just as well as men when they're negotiating on
I
behalf
think
of other
women would
people.
do better in negotiating, right? Because, I mean, depending on who they're negotiating with. If they're negotiating with another woman for one spot, that could be...
It's tough. I mean, there's a lot of sort of structural barriers that are there to be overcome, right? But, I mean, everyone has barriers in life, and some people have more than others, and
Deal with them.
just got to find a way over.
Why don't we do some burpees? Take a little burpee break.
Okay,
And then we'll come back.
sounds good.
Is that all right?
Hey Spartans, Zach Evnesh here, the host of Spartan Way. I'm with you every Thursday as part of the Spartan Up podcast, and today I want to share a message with our sponsor, Shady Rays. This is an independent sunglass company that's doing things very unique, very differently, really cool. Number one, I've always hesitated to buy sunglasses because I know that if I invest $100, $200+ on a pair of sunglasses, I am going to break them. I am going to lose them. The unique thing about Shady Rays is they have the best warranty in all of eyewear. If you lose them, if you break them, they will replace them free of charge, no questions asked. The other thing that's cool is with every order placed with Shady Rays is they provide 10 meals to fight hunger in America. We've got a real cool offer exclusive for the listeners and viewers of Spartan, where if you order 2 sunglasses from ShadyRays.com, you get 50% off. So it's basically a buy one, get one free, where you could buy yourself a pair, and then you could gift somebody else the other pair. They've got different styles than these, and the code is Spartan. So if you go to ShadyRays.com and enter the code Spartan, it's 50% off. Not only are you getting a super affordable pair of sunglasses that are about $45 each, it's a buy one, get one free. That's the best offer that they've given anybody. And also you're going to help provide 10 meals to fight hunger in America. Can't go better than that.
So what do you think of those burpees?
They were great. I feel invigorated.
You feel good, right?
Yeah,
It was the Spartan tea.
it was probably the tea.
It was probably the tea. So information overload, 600 podcasts. That's just on the one podcast. How many have you done on the other on the second podcast you do?
The other one, we've only done about 15.
All right, so 615 podcasts. You're getting bombarded with all this information. Is it like difficult because you apply some stuff to your life, then you're getting contradictory information?
Fortunately, the information isn't usually contradictory, so you can kind of take the stuff that resonates with you, take the best, forget the rest. You know, you can kind of, oh, that's helpful
a good one
to
to
me.
take away for listeners out there, right?
Yeah.
Take the best, forget the rest. But how do you know what the best is?
To me, it's, do I find this useful? Could I actually try this at home? If you can't actually implement the advice, it doesn't matter how good it is or how rigorous it is. If you can't implement it, it's just not going to work.
Give me a couple of things that you have implemented at home
Oh, man. All right.
that we can implement at home.
So something that I have done is when you are setting goals, the research says you should be very specific and concrete, and then you should write down your progress or keep yourself accountable. And other people can help you be accountable.
So not a loosey-goosey goal. It's
No.
like, we're going to do this by this date.
Yeah, I am going to edit 6 articles this week, and I'm going to tell my boss I'm going to edit 6 articles this week. This is my world as an editor, right? And so what I've done is I have set those numerical goals. I have a spreadsheet where I track my progress. It's a color-coded spreadsheet. It's a little nerdy and intense, but it works for me. And then I share that with my boss at the end of every week. This is how much I did this week or this year or whatever.
What's nice about that, being a boss myself, is I would imagine if I saw that from a coworker, that I would be like, she's on it. I don't even have to pay attention. She's got it. Right?
Yeah.
As opposed to asking, where are you?
Right.
What are we attacking?
Yeah.
So if you're listening out there and you work for somebody, color-coded.
Color-coded spreadsheet.
Color-coded spreadsheet, right? Set some goals and tell your boss and shout it, you're saying. Commit to it publicly.
Yeah. Commit to it publicly. Do it. Tell your boss about it. Because, I mean, when I've been a boss, I've been amazed at how much my people might be working on that I don't even know they're working on. And then I find out and I'm like, that's great. Right. But as a boss, you want to know that stuff.
Biggest problem we have at work is I got to deal with budgets and trying to get growth every year, and I don't like any of that stuff. I mean, because that's not the fun stuff, right? The fun stuff is let's put on great events, let's go around the world, let's change lives, and I've got to get people inherently to do more with less. Any tricks there on the 600 podcasts in your?
Yeah. Well, first you got to stop doing the things that aren't generating revenue or that aren't helping the company, right? So it's kind of like you take an inventory of all the things you're doing. And this is something that we publish that I use. Write down everything you're doing. Which of these things could you stop doing tomorrow and literally no one would notice? Yep. Then what can you shrink the amount of time that you spend on? You know, how much time, like a time diary? How much time are you spending on these different things? And what's the impact you're getting?
The list would be like 42 miles long.
Yeah, right? And then you think, how can I shrink those low value tasks? So those are like just a couple ways to start. I mean, the other way to do it is to flip it around. Write down everything you do. What are the 2 most important things?
And just focus
on those. The other stuff doesn't happen. Don't worry about it.
And you could apply that same concept to your own life.
Totally.
Right? Because I think we all waste a lot of time doing things that don't move the needle.
Yeah. So you do your big priorities first. You do your workout first thing in the day so that something happens later, it doesn't screw it up. Yep. You know? Have 2
or 3 big things you want to try to accomplish in that day.
Get them done and then squeeze everything else into the 25 minutes you have left.
That's right. And stay off social media.
Oh, God.
Stay off Netflix. Right? Yeah. Stay off the couch.
Yeah.
Why do we even do these podcasts? I mean, you're spending a lot of time on them. We're spending a lot of time on them.
I'll tell you why I do mine, and then maybe you can tell me. I'd be curious to hear what you think. But so for me, a subscription to Harvard Business Review is rather expensive.
How much?
Oh gosh, you see, I should know this. Like $200 maybe.
Okay.
It's $17 an issue, right? The magazine. Yep. I really hope that like my boss isn't watching. He's like, you don't know how much it costs. Anyway, it's a barrier to some people. Our podcast is free. And the way I think about it, if we're putting that advice out there to help more people become leaders and anyone can get it, then anyone can see themselves as a leader. Anyone can have the tools they need to step up and influence other people and make change in the world. And I don't think that there's a person out there who thinks the world has enough good leaders.
Right.
We need more.
We need more.
So that's what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah, and our mission is to change lives. So same thing. You're right. Yeah. It's free. It's good advice, and we're getting it out there.
Yeah.
So we're going to boil them down because you covered a lot of good stuff here. Give me the 3 things, the big 3 takeaways.
I would say my main advice would be consistency first. Just focus on consistency. You don't have to climb Mount Everest. You can just climb a small mountain every day, right?
I like that.
Second, I would say, have clear goals. Have clear, achievable goals. Write them down. Be honest with them. Tell other people about them. Have other people help you be accountable. And just focus on those small wins.
Along the way.
Along the way. Yeah, track your progress. Celebrate progress as much as reaching the goal.
All right. I already feel better. Yeah. Good stuff.
All right.
2 more burpees.
Yeah.
How awesome is she, right? I mean, first of all, like we downloaded only like a fraction of probably what's in there, and we know there's so much more. But I mean, one of my favorite parts of that interview, Joe, was when you asked, well, how do you get these people? And she said, I asked. And I love that the simplicity of that, because I think so often we're actually even just afraid to ask, right? It's like, well, they're too big, or this person's too smart, or, but just put yourself out there and move forward with it.
It even goes through my mind, and Spartan wields a pretty big stick right now. Like, we could make a call pretty much to anybody, and but it goes through my mind where you stop before you even ask. Right. Like, well, they're not going to say. I'm not going to be able to get to the person.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's because you're measuring yourself against your own metrics and not how others see you. Right. You're questioning whether you are who you think you are, kind of thing, but others know who you are. If I made any sense.
No, that made total sense. And another way that I've heard it put
on. You guys need to boost me up more.
I just did.
That was a huge
another way that I've heard it put is don't say no for people. Like, if you don't ask them, you're saying no for them.
Exactly.
They probably wouldn't want to
That's
ask them.
That's a great
Every girl I didn't ask to the prom. They all said no.
That's a good one.
And they're all still regretting it, I'm sure.
Yeah, someone said to me once, a silent ask is a definite no.
Yeah, sure. Sure. So she says we just go ask them.
Right.
And again, they've certainly earned the right to go ask anybody. I mean, it's the Harvard Business Review, right? This is one of those ones, too, that when you look at, sometimes we have a guest on and they have a concise story. There's that one thing that makes them interesting and we really dive into it. Here's someone who, I mean, certainly very interesting in her own right. I mean, she's very successful, very composed, amazing person. And also, has 600 of her own interviews to draw on. And it's kind of one of those ones you almost wish you could book a week and, interview her every day because you'd get something more out of it every single day.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I put her on the spot, and so it was hard for her, I think, to go deep on remembering all the podcasts. But there were some good nuggets in there. I mean, I like. Sorry,
no,
I
go,
love.
sir. You're the
I
boss.
love having a woman negotiate for you.
Yeah,
right. That's something I never thought of. But I mean, Dr. L, maybe you can comment on if that's true or not. But
well, yeah. I mean, I think if we just think of like the primal instinct of being female, it's taken care of, right? And so I think in that way, as she identified, women are really good at negotiating for other people, really good at taking care of other people. It's with ourselves that we need to work on.
So a question with that, when you think about this male-dominated idea about business that you drive and you drive and you drive, and is it that, men will drive harder for themselves because it's ego and, the drive, and where in the past you thought women won't push as hard, but what you're saying is if you can have them pushing on other people's behalf as well, that they're probably more... You use that nurturing instinct to actually harness their power. Is that the idea?
Well, yeah. I mean, and I think women are fierce beasts, and we can power through. We can push as hard. One thing that I thought was interesting that she said too is that women are often competing because there just aren't as many spots.
Yeah, two lions, one mountain.
Yeah.
Competing with each other, right?
Yeah.
But from what you're describing, though, is the fierce beast, which is the exact traits or attributes of leadership.
Right.
Right. So
Bingo.
It should be a natural progression.
Mm-hmm.
They ought to be able to stand out. We were talking, the one thing though with her answers that I noticed, this is what came across to me. She's got a very analytical mind, and even though every question wasn't that, there was a lot of references and some of it was off camera, but when you would ask something, it's the study said this or the study said that. So when you're getting into the Harvard Business Review or you're getting into that, it's a lot of academic, right? And you've got to be able to cite references, cite work. You can't just say, I think this. You've got to be able to demonstrate it. It's got to be concrete, and somebody has had to put forward a proof. So she speaks a little bit, slower is not the right word, but more precise, right? Because it's got to be precise in her world.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I loved, for somebody out there listening or watching that works for someone, we talked about it obviously when I was interviewing her, this idea that just get way ahead of it and show your boss, that person you're reporting to, that you're on it. And you're detailed and you hit your targets and your deadlines. And
I'm thinking all the emails you send me, you're wearing me out, leave me alone.
We've had other guests who talk about just in a general sense that create accountability for yourself. Like tell everyone I'm going to do this marathon and tell them all you're going to do it and tell them what day you're going to do it so they'll hold you accountable. And I heard a bit of that coming through here too, where instead of just toiling away quietly hoping your boss will notice, say, hey, just want to let you know what I'm working on right now. I've set myself this deadline. Here's what I hope to have achieved by then.
Well, I think
then I was just going to say you've got that accountability, but also the boss gets to see you fall through on what you said you were going to do. I thought that was a really great way to put it.
Yeah. Well, I think too, and this is a little bit of a sidetrack, but I think similar. We we sometimes test people in ways that are really unfair. You know, I mean, for example, yesterday was my birthday. I told everyone it was my birthday. It's not like I waited quietly to be like, no, is anyone going to say happy birthday? I was like, it's my birthday.
Oh,
So,
you sure did.
Yeah.
Where's my cake?
But I think in that sense, it's like we sometimes test in ways that are unfair to the people around us. And especially in leadership roles and in business roles, we need to stand up and say, like, this is what I'm working on, or this is what I'd like to do, and own it.
Yeah, this is my expectation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but you've got to be careful, I think. You've got to do all of that within whatever system your organization has, right? You want to be seen as the person who's trying to get to the boss to say, look at me, look at me.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Or,
Yeah.
So,
I think that's clear.
So,
Yeah.
so the system or the matrix or the color-coded time calendar or whatever she has,
Yeah, sure.
works best when everybody else has the exact same thing in the and then in the weekly update to the boss, boom, throw it up and everybody slide. And then when her graph is higher or further to the right or whatever than everybody else, it pops out.
When you mentioned the color coding too, because that was another thing we can pull away just for the personal, even outside of the business, because not everyone in those listening or watching is going to be, working at Harvard. But the idea when she said, write down everything that you do, even just from a personal standpoint, take a look at your day, look where you spend every minute, and then say, which of these are high impact activities that I can prioritize, and which are the ones that are low impact activities that I can deprioritize, and maybe even take right off my schedule. And I thought that was really good advice for anybody.
I like the small wins.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and again, we've said this before in the military, that's a 50-meter target, right? You got to knock down all the 50-meter targets before you can shoot to the 100-meter, before you can even sight your weapon on the 500-meter target. All of those targets in front of you have to be knocked down and cleared, your field of fire, so that you can start to look forward.
And the idea of consistency, that you'll be able to look forward if you consistently do these things. So you do 600 podcasts, you're going to get good at it. You keep climbing mountains, and it's not like 12 years later you're dusting off your boots and hoping they still fit, right?
Consistency. And with that,
Hey, with that, we're going to be back next week consistently with yet another great guest. I want to thank Sarah Green Carmichael for taking the time to come in and talk to us. Phenomenal. Like I say, a wealth of knowledge that we just barely tapped into. And we're going to be back next Tuesday, all of us. And Sephra, who's not here this week. She is in Fiji. Doing a great seed project.
no, I definitely feel like we have less to talk about when it comes to seeds and forestry and things. But I don't know. It feels like a little more cerebral. I'm kidding.
If you have goals, we're here for you with daily tips to keep you on track and interviews every Tuesday with inspiring, motivating people. The only thing we ask of you is to push yourself and push your limits, and to help us get the word out. We're on a mission to rip 100 million people off the couch and give them the tools to keep going. So please, tell your friends about us. Subscribe. Share it if you like this episode, and let us know what you think. Are we on the right track? You can find us on Instagram at Spartan Up Podcast or on Twitter at Spartan Up Pod. See you next week.
This episode of the Spartan Up Podcast is brought to you by Shady Rays Sunglasses, built for adventure. Go to shadyrays.com and use the code Spartan to get 50% off when you order 2 pairs of sunglasses from Shady Rays.